Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a book called The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran by Shida Baziar. Shida wrote the novel in German and it came out in 2016, and then it was translated into English by Ruth Martin in 2025, and the book was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize for this year. The structure of this book is that it's separated into 4 parts, then an epilogue, and it's basically a multi-generational story that tells the story of one nuclear family from living in Tehran before the 1979 revolution to their move to West Germany as Iranians in exile, and then the next generation becoming Germans. So essentially this couple, Behzad and Nahid, and then their kids. Each part is told from a different character's point of view. And I'm not spoiling anything, you can find this in the table of contents. But the first section takes place in 1979 when the Shah leaves Iran and the Islamic clerics take over the Islamic Revolution, and it's through the point of view of Behzad. And then the next section is 10 years later in 1989, and that's through the perspective of his wife Nahid. And then the next section is another 10 years later in 1999, and that's through the perspective of their eldest daughter, whose name is Lale. And then 10 years later in 2009, we get the perspective of Lale's younger brother, Mo. And then the epilogue is the third child, the youngest daughter, Tara. So I have kind of mixed feelings about this book. I think off the bat, I did really enjoy it, and I found the subject matter very moving, and I think the writing was pretty palatable and pretty emotionally aware and really made me feel for this story and for this family. Having said that, I do feel certain sections, at least for me personally, resonated a lot more than others. I really liked the sections or the chapters that were told from the point of view of Nahid when she was transitioning to life in Western Germany and as the matriarch of this family, struggling with how to fit in. She and her husband are very closely following what has befallen to their friends in Tehran, because they left essentially because they were associated with the communist movement, and then how to raise children, and then also going back to university or going to university in Germany. I really thought that her internal dialogue and this struggle was super compelling and really complexly rendered, very multifaceted. And I also really related to Lala's story when her chapter, which happens in 1999, is her experience of going back to Tehran for the first time since they left. She was maybe 4 years old when they left for West Germany, and that experience I really relate to because I remember just visiting China. My mom is Chinese, as a kid in the summers, and just not really being accepted. I mean, obviously I'm not Chinese and I don't look Chinese, but being part of the family and being carried around by the family and being told to do all these things and being only surrounded by Chinese speakers, no English speakers, and just having this experience of not fitting in, but then having to hang out with your family the whole summer. That's exactly what she goes through. But of course her culture shock is a lot more stark because she's also dealing with her cousin being my friend's fingernails were pulled out because she was wearing nail polish, and having to wear the hijab and the morality police and all of that. So that's a much bigger culture shock. But even with that very intense and violent backdrop, her concerns are still very teenage girl coded, and I just love that because at the end of the day, she's thinking about her crush David back in Germany, but she's also navigating these complex feelings of how silly it is to have a crush on this boy when her family and the people from her hometown are going through so much. And she has this interaction with her childhood crush Nima, who can't even go to school because he's politically active or he's trying to go to school overseas, and then later we find out that his visa has been denied and he goes to prison. So just that moral complexity and feeling guilt, but also feeling relief, and also just being a teenage girl, I thought that was very expertly rendered on the page as well. So I think those two chapters stood out to me the most. Behzad's was fine, but it kind of just fell along, standard the standard story that I was expecting. I just read Persepolis before this as well, so reading a lot of Iranian art. That's my cat. And then Mo's chapter I didn't really relate to at all. He's just kind of like a college student in that chapter and bumming around, I feel like. I guess for Mo's chapter, he's in uni in Germany while Iran is going through the Green Revolution. So maybe she just felt like she needed to capture these big moments in Iran's history, but I just didn't really relate to Mo bumming around. And then this is where I'm gonna tag spoilers, because the thing that I find very fascinating about this novel is the epilogue. The epilogue's only like a few pages, and it's the perspective of Tara, the youngest daughter. We're in the perspective of Tara. It's a very short epilogue. And in her chapter, there's the fall of the Islamic regime. And she's on a road trip with Lala's daughter, so her niece, if I'm remembering correctly. And they've turned off their phones because they're on this like wellness road trip. They're trying to unplug. And then they go into a gas station and they read all the papers, Der Spiegel, whatever, and they see the news that the Islamic regime has fallen. And I got very confused. I was like, wait a second, this hasn't actually happened, right? I had to like Google, I'm so dumb. I had to Google and I was like, what? This is like an alternate history. What? Are you hungry? Baby, there's so much food for you. Literally, there's wet food and dry food. Yeah. But obviously that hasn't happened. And so I'm so fascinated by this idea of authorial intent, authorial power, like the author is God, and this kind of responsibility they feel to, well, one, just their power to change, like they have so much power over their written word, obviously, to just change the ending of things. And two, I feel like I've come across this idea a couple times where the author feels like they have a moral responsibility to leave their readers with hope and optimism. And I think especially like what she's gone through, what the author I feel like has gone through, and maybe her own family circumstances, as well as what the characters have gone through, feels like she almost owes them this like happy ending and this very optimistic ending. But as a reader, and I'm speaking just purely from the point of view as a reader, I can't help but feel like it's a cop-out, because it's like wish fulfillment. And I don't feel like anything before it really built up to that outcome. It just kind of was like 10-year snapshots and then like, oh, well, even though everyone's struggled and it's been totally horrible for these decades, hope things turn out well and hope that the really oppressive regime falls. And you just put that in the last 5 pages. So I'm super, super keen to hear from any of y'all who have read this book and how you received it. Did you find it very like hopeful and optimistic? Did you find it confusing? Or are you smarter than me and like figured out what was happening immediately? Or were you like me and did you feel a little bit cheated? I don't know, I'm really curious for what people think. My friends that I read this book with, none of them have finished it, so I can't really discuss with them yet, but I'm very curious for anyone's reactions to the epilogue, because she basically just dreams up this future reality which has not happened. And it's not even too far into the future. I think it would be like 2019 at most, where Iran now has like a democratically elected government and the Islamic regime has fallen. So let me know what you think if you've read this. I think it's worth the read. I learned a lot. I think I was pretty ignorant about this part of history before, and now having read this and Persepolis, I feel like I at least have a baseline. I do think this is important just because of the substance and the content. It's maybe not my absolute favorite in terms of like structure and writing style, characterization and storytelling, but I do think the chapters that are told from the female point of view, both Nahid the mom and Lala the daughter, are really, really gut-wrenching and really alive and human. So I do think it's worth reading this for those chapters alone. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I have a few more videos coming up before I take my summer break. I'm going to chat a bit about Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. I also am filming an episode of Book Talk with my best friend Yao on Mother Mary Comes to Me by Arundhati Roy, who is a fantastic writer. So stay tuned for those, and sorry for the cat meowing. What? Go.